Howdy, of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 12. So, coming back to this show, I'm like, oh, thank God. I was like, man, it's been such a long time since I can, review this show. And so now, finally having it back, it's, it's a nice thing to just be like, okay, so at least, I know I have this to just kind of keep going into, compared to everything else where it's just kind of what am I going to do every day? This looks good. This feels good. So, speaking of how this episode feels, I would say that this episode goes into being, a pretty okay episode to me. We do have kind of a goofy concept episode. We also do have an episode where it could be clickbaiting for people, especially if they are to be well aware of the Arrowverse. We do have a special person who is to arrive in this episode that people might be familiar with, and I'm just kind of questioning why exactly they had this person to be on this show. I guess because he just had nothing better to do, or this person had nothing better to do, or this girl had nothing better to do. And so, but it's just one person, so eventually you'll figure out who that is when you go into this episode. Really, I could also say that I think, the very last episode is to have told us that John Henry Irons is going to be in this next episode, and I can confirm that. I can also confirm that also we are still going to have the Cushing or Kyle and Sarah story, whichever, with that family of Lana and all the Cushing whatever family. We're gonna have a story for them, because bizarrely they need to keep instead of it being focusing on Clark and family, we're still focusing on Sarah and family, because why, I don't know. They just need time to kill with not having to focus on the Clark Kent family, so they're just bizarrely continuingly tying into Sarah's for reasons that I guess could make sense, but then again I'm they're obviously just coming up with something to keep tying in this family, and then they have a goofy send-off thing that I didn't really enjoy in this episode. But thank God at least it's not that Sarah has another song that she needs to twang and sing for 2 episodes. At least they didn't do filler like that, so we can appreciate that they didn't do garbage like that for these episodes, or for this episode, I mean. So, Morgan Edge is to be a threat, but he's kind of taking a back seat to something in this episode, because within the last episode, Superman was to give up his conscience, trade in his conscience, or trade in his brain faculties to save his family. And so now we're going to see what that faculty swapping thing is to bring in this episode. And we are also going to see what special guest is to bring within this episode also. Not much of a lick of anything, in all brutal honesty. Nothing that really matters legitimately to me. But at least it's just nice to see a person. That's cool. But anyways, that's really just about it. There's a consistent time where the Clark family is to consistently go to, let's say, at John Henry Irons in this episode consistently, and that gets kind of annoying already. After they did it the first time, I'm okay, please don't go to this same well. Is gonna Crypto come up to John Henry Irons and be bark, bark, and Irons is yeah, I know, dog. I know. Clark. Okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. I speak dogese. It's an elective that I learned in alternate world. Like, I've been watching a lot of Marvel freaking movies lately, and I know that's sacrilege to some people. I'm wearing a freaking Captain America shirt, so what? But yeah, so like bizarrely, there would have this like person, this one person that's like, yeah, I took bizarrish language that nobody knows as an elective, and so like now I bizarrely know dog. I know how to speak to dogs. That's what I was expecting eventually this to bizarrely happen in this episode. Because it couldn't get, like, it couldn't have a goofier enough thing going on into this episode. So, if anything, let me pause here for a second. Alright. I'm also going to let everybody know that I'm going IMDb free tonight, or free with this review. So it's going to be just straight off the cuff. If there's any, like, characters that have probably still been consistently lurking around into this show, excuse me, and some people should think that I should probably know their name by now. I'm not going to bother. Like, I feel like there's some characters that are probably going to eventually just write themselves off of the story, and so why should I bother? Like, man, I'm going to really need to know, like, every single person who would ever become a Kryptonian in this episode, because they really just have a consistent backstory or a consistent story being told in here. No. But anyways, yeah, so Superman is to go with Morgan Edge, and it seems that Superman, cryptically talking, is fighting something. Something from coming. Bizarrely. And and so that is to line up John Henry Irons, who is doing something. Like, I honestly think what John Henry Irons was doing was kind of interesting. But then again, I'm like, well, like, are they just going to keep pulling at that string consistently? Or, like, what is all going to happen out of that? I'm kind of curious. But anyways, for curiosity of people, let's go into just talking about the show in a very spoiler-like sense. Kind of teeing it up for people, but really at the end of the day, not also saying much. So I think it's that coveted time again to go in spoilers. Spoiler time. It's about the time we need to spoil this episode. So, the parts of which that I would like to cover. Which will... So, let's cover the Cushing family. So, we find out that it seems that Kyle is to want to go back into work and work for the police station. And it seems like a coworker of his, like, you know what? Like, I just think that you should just stay home and just not get paid. And just, like, just stay home because everybody isn't liking the fact of what you did to this town. Because it's a small town, so word gets around fairly easily. A lot of people are just uneasy about you being at home or being, like, at work with us. Maybe you're all of a sudden going to, like, heat vision any number of us, so maybe you should just stay back home because you might be feeling a little Kryptonian today. And so Kyle is like, well, okay, like, I guess that could be fine. And so, but that leads to this family eventually going out to go and talk to some other people who had been Kryptonian at one point. And so we have, like, everybody who's kind of, like, blaming Kyle for, like, them at some point probably turning Kryptonian. And, like, Kyle is just like, dude, like, I just wanted people to have jobs. Like, I thought what Morgan Edge was doing was just going to create jobs for people. And, like, why am I getting this backlash for all of a sudden everybody getting a little bit of that dose of superpower inside of them? But yeah, we have all these other person or people that had been Kryptonians that were also just kind of like bitter about all this. It's like, man, like everybody like hates and fears me now because I was at some point a Kryptonian. I'm like, dude, you don't see like in like Ghostbusters 2, like you don't see like Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis just going like, man, everybody like hates and fears me now because at one point I was a Terra dog and but the Ghostbusters helped me. Like you don't see that like aftermath of the sequel where they're just kind of like, maybe I can turn it into a dog still. I don't know. Like the Ghostbusters weren't 100% sure about all of this. But like we have it in here where all of a sudden like everybody's just like in fear that quite possibly these people could change into another person at any time, still being these sleeper agents. But like there is no proof of that yet. So Lois is to eventually go and talk with Kyle and Lana and ask them about their body swapping experience. Like if they had control, like if they didn't have control, if it felt like they were just like sleeping and stuff like that. Like Lana mainly said that she felt like it was just like a sleeping kind of thing. And Kyle was like, well, it kind of felt like I was like in and out. Like there was not really like it kind of felt like a 100% kind of hold thing. And Lois is like, great, great. Like I'm gonna know like, cause Lana is gonna realize here shortly that Superman is going to be a vessel for Zod, and so Superman is in the Badlands, and he's eventually going to bizarrely uh, power shout out to like he's gonna give a shout out to Jordan, like, hey, Dad, no, Pop, doing the Badlands, yo. Straight busy all up in here, you know? Kryptonian style. Jordan's like, for real. What the heck was that? I don't know. But, so all of a sudden we now have hearing power that bizarrely all of a sudden like Jordan has to do like Charles Xavier as if he's like psychically linking to his father. Like he's not like going like this, or he's not going like this, or he's not like going like yes, Dad, yes. Like he's doing this weird, bizarre like Charles Xavier like mind power thing. It's freaking weird. But we'll also get to the Jordan stuff in a minute here. So Superman is to try to fight the vessel of Zod, coming all up inside of him and taking over. And so eventually, like, Superman is to, like, consistently have his heat vision coming on and off, but it actually doesn't, like, shoot out. Like, it just kind of, like, he just has these, like, heat vision, like, flashes of his eyes. And so Superman is kind of, like, trying to hold off Zod, but, like, Morgan Edge is like, dude, this is kind of like inevitable that Zod will come through you. Like, you can, like, if anything, like, Superman is supposedly feeling pain because Morgan Edge is to tell us that Superman is to be feeling pain. And that he's basically saying that, like, well, like, hopefully you have felt pain in the past, or otherwise this is really going to just suck for you. Morgan Edge should just be like, well, like, guess what? Like, I felt the worst possible pain that I could ever feel. So anything that anyone is to do to me, in comparison, is just not going to actually hurt me. Because I felt the worst possible pain of bizarrish red light coming from the sky to hit me. Like, give it to me. Put some steak on it, baby. Do your worst. Do your worst, bizarrish father. that is not Zor-El, it's whatever L something. I don't know what his actual name is. I'm just gonna call him Morgan Edge's father. So, uh, so eventually Superman is to go out of this cave and try and shout out to Jordan, give him a shout out, just be like, hey, J-Town. Because Jonathan is asking Jordan, like, hey, like, do you think that you can find, like, Dad, like, using your, like, hearing, using your super hearing? And Jordan is like, well, if anything, I can try, but, like, I think what I need to do is, like, get away from these people that are by the barn. And then Jonathan's like, right, like, go ahead. So Jordan is to eventually kind of separate himself, and then all of a sudden he is to try and hear things from all kinds of places, like even places that are like other countries and stuff like that, because Jordan has never really reined in or honed in on this power, and now he kind of has to. And so here's the bizarre thing. Jordan is like having Jonathan sit basically right next to him. Wouldn't that have been a hindrance? Like, that's why, like, Superman goes, like, out to space to try to, like, hear things. Like, with having Jonathan just, like, right there, like, Jordan could probably hear Jonathan breathing. He could probably hear him farting. He could hear him sneezing. And, like, that could just blow out frickin' Jordan's super ears. And just be like, like, dude, I was trying to get to our dad, and I'm hearing you fart and sneeze and whatever. Come on, bro. Get the heck out of here. But no, Jordan is just sitting there because he's like, I desperately need camera time. And Jordan's like, me too, because they haven't been focusing on us fairly lately. But thank God for that, because it just makes a better episode, in all honesty. So, so eventually Super Dad is to make his way out of the cave to say, Jordan! What's for dinner, Jordan? Is it peas? And Jordan is like, Dad, like, I hear you with my Xavier powers that I have now. And so all of a sudden Morgan Edge is popping out of the cave to, like, see what, like, Superman's up to. Just like, oh, hey, neighbor. What are you up to? Trying to talk to your son? Well, that's not really going to help things. That's not really going to, like, for what's coming, like, that's not going, like, Jordan can help you. Like, just so you know, Clark. Just so you're aware, brother. And so, like, Morgan makes Jordan aware of that. And so Jordan is like, oh my God. Because, like, both Jonathan and Jordan are thinking that Clark is going to leave them and just join the Kryptonian band on their road trip to go and destroy the world. And, like, we have to, like, show, like, scenes, I guess, from the last episode where Lois is convinced the kids, it's like, no, like, your father loves us, and love conquers all. Cue the power ballad. Do, 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 do. Whatever. Anyways, so Superman is to eventually just give in to Zod, and then so Zod is now within Superman. So if we haven't had enough of Zod, like, body swapping from any number of characters at this point, so we've had a Zod Lex Luthor in Smallville. We've had a Zod in another Zod from, again, still Smallville. We've had, bizarrely, like, Lex Luthor's dad inside Superman, which, like, isn't the exact same thing, but, like, I'm counting it, so 3. And then we've also had now Superman inside of Zod. or Zod inside of Superman, I mean. So, like, we have Zod Superman, bizarrely. Like, if we don't have Dark Superman from the other world, now we're dealing with Zod. What the is any of this? Like, they just needed to just have, like, I was waiting for him to say, like, kneel before Zod, but no, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say kneel. If we're gonna have a technical Zod in the show, dude, somebody needs to be doing some kneeling. I was severely disappointed that there's a technical Zod in the show, and no one kneels in front of him. This show is disappointing in that factor. I wanted a kneel factor, and there was none. So, Superman just bizarrely just becomes Zod because he, like, is like, yeah, dude, I was watching Superman 2 the other day, and I felt, dang, man, you know what we've been missing? More Zod. So, so what ends up happening is that John Henry Irons comes back, and so John Henry Irons is to tell Sam, or Lane, General Lane, that, hey, man, like, on my other world, I had a weapon to take out Superman, and it was a solar weapon. It was like a solar rocket. And coincidentally, by the time that I was to use that solar weapon, immediately I just came here, so I couldn't have seen exactly if this whole thing worked or not. Which I'm like, then why didn't Dark Superman come to this Earth? I'm really confused. Like, shouldn't have Dark Superman landed on this Earth? And isn't it going to be at some point an episode where Dark Superman is going to appear on this Earth? Because I'm naturally assuming that that's going to happen. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that eventually that's how they're going to write him in now. Because this episode. So, supposedly, John Henry Irons had fired off this weapon and took out this other Superman. And so now, like, John Henry Irons is telling, like, Sam, hey, like, hook me up with that, like, the ex-wife. Like, if you guys remember Iron Man 2, like, hook me up with just a missile that can just pop out of my arm or pop out of some of my armor and just be this small, piddly, pencil-looking, like, giant pen of a thing that is just gonna, like, fire out and hit some Kryptonian. And so Sam is like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do that. So that has to have John Diggle come in and, like, provide some Argus tech, and so here's the thing. John Diggle may be coming, like, back for a specific reason. Because, one, if you guys don't remember a little show called Arrow, man, are you missing out. If you, like, just went into this show and you've never saw Arrow, check out the early episodes, especially waiting for this thing to just keep on churning out. Arrow is such a great show, and if you did see the whole thing, like, eventually it gets really bad in certain seasons. And plus also, there's people that were just diehard Arrow fans that just watched the whole thing regardless. But, like, John Diggle was in there, and man, did he just have a weird outfit that looked very much Magneto-esque, and it looked weird, and everybody complained about it. And he wasn't wearing that in this episode. Like, like, what? Did they scrap his, like, Magneto helmet thing? Whatever. So, but John Diggle is coming in to delivering this thing here. And so, here's the thing. There could actually be a possibility that they might go and do another Arrow show some way or another. Because, one, the girl who was to, I guess, play Artemis, or the Arrow's daughter, had said that she had signed on to do some kind of project, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, with uh, with either the CW or HBO, like in the future. So we could continue on with this character in some kind of capacity somewhere. And Dose, John Diggle was supposed to be, like, that actual actor was supposed to go to the Green Lantern HBO series, I guess, as Jon Stewart. So since this guy is, like, waiting to get the, like, Green Lantern show, like, green lighted, funny joke. Like, I guess he's just like, dude, when are we gonna do something? Can I just, like, be somewhere? like Stephen Amell, and here's the third part. Stephen Amell had mentioned that he might be interested in doing some kind of Arrow reunion show, but that was really when the Cove was happening, when the new normal was popping off. Stephen Amell was mentioning that, like, maybe he would be interested in going back to that character if honestly things were getting very difficult for him to be able to shoot Heels or whatever. And eventually Heels is coming out in August, so get ready for that. Because, like, frickin' if you don't have stars, frickin' I have a number of apps to suggest to you to just avoid that whole debacle. And eventually I'll get to that when... So just subscribe to eventually wait for August to happen, and then you'll see Heels if you're interested in that show. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a wrestling show with Stephen Amell. If you have no interest in that, but you just like Stephen Amell, just go ahead and check that out, because I will be reviewing that show. Guarantee you. So there's a lot of just up in the air things going on with the whole Arrow thing. To just kind of just have us just be happy that John Diggle is in this show. But anyway, so John Diggle is just delivering this equipment to eventually find out what it's to be used for. And so John Diggle just comes in here and he's like, "Who the heck are you?" And John Henry Irons is like, "Well, like, I'm John Henry Irons and I'm from another, like, Earth." And John Diggle's like, "Wait a minute, you're from another Earth? Sam, you and me need to have, like, a conversation. Like, I've been dealing with people from other Earths, and you know what? Like, things don't end up quite all that great." You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Crisis on Infinite Earths. Earth 2, 3, 5 billion and 2814, Sector 2814. Earth. That's not the same thing as Earth 2, but still, it's a joke. Anyways, so... I wish there would have been, like, Earth 5, where, like, you just have slight little cosmetic tweaks to everybody's costume. It'd be, like, purple Arrow. Violet Arrow. Whatever. Anyways, I'm making jokes. Too many of them, of course. So... But eventually, Irons is to eventually go out to the Badlands to find Superman. And so now it's this fight out between both Superman and Irons. And so I'm just going to call him Steel. Like, I'm really just going to call him Steel. It's just a lot easier, and technically, that's the actual character's name, is Steel. You would have thought they would have just easily just figured that out by now. Just call him Steel. So, before Steel is to go off to fight Superman, Lois is to tell Irons that, hey, like, just so you know, Superman is Clark Kent. And Irons is like, say what now? Superman, Clark? I didn't know. Spoilers. Spoilers of the show. I didn't want to know that. But then Lois is to mention, like, yeah, and, like, I'm married to him, and I have kids, and, like, that is going to be the reason why Superman is not going to go to the dark side, because they have cookies. No, like, he has a wife, and he has 2 kids, and that's the most incentive thing for him to not turn evil. And so, like, think of that while you're fighting my husband. And then so also Jonathan is to arrive to Irons, just be like, hey man, like, I'm gonna tell the whole backstory of how like you've been involved in my life. And then also I'm just gonna say, hey man, like, when you're going out there and you're throwing your punches and whatever, like remember that this guy is a really good dad too, because I've seen like your world, and I've seen like you and your daughter, and what a great father that you could be. And like, just think of my dad and the quite possible good father things that he's been doing, not quite lately, but somewhere in there in the series. You know what I'm saying? And then Irons is like, great. And then Crypto comes in and he's like, bark, bark. And like, Irons is like, get the heck out of here, Crypto. You're not in this episode. So, like, Jordan didn't say crap because he just doesn't care. Because, like, Jordan is like, dude, I have freaking superpowers. I don't have to worry about, like, freaking, like, going to Irons and just saying, like, hey, do something for my dad, right? So, Irons goes out and he is to, like, just kind of have, like, Superman just, like, kind of, like tackle into him or smash into him consistently, knocking Steel kind of back. And like, now we have Steel in this like Iron Man like display, bizarrely. And so Sam is like, well, like, has Superman turned? Like, has he full on cooked yet? Is it to the point of when it's to say ding, fries are done kind of thing? And so, Steel is like, well, hey, give me a second. And then so all of a sudden, Superman is just sound differently. Like, he bizarrely went through some, like, robot, like, voice changer bizarrely, because, man, I wish there was a Bizarro in this show. Good God, do I just wish there was either a robot Superman or like a Bizarro Superman or some interesting thing to, like, instead of being all this like goofy, crappy, like body swapping situation. I hope that this kills this whole body swapping thing off. Like, I want them to just kind of experiment with like different kind of Superboys, or experiment with some kind of like Bizarro or something like that. Do something fun with these episodes. Please, like, give us Parasite. That would be cool to like reintroduce this character because of Smallville doing what it did. But anyways, so Steel is to eventually like pop his rocket out of his hand. And so because like Clark is going and like hitting, or Superman is hitting Steel, and eventually like Superman is on top of Steel, and but we see that Clark is trying to fight out Zod, and like he's trying to, like, his eyes are opening and closing. And so that's when Steel takes the perfect opportunity to pull off the Thor hammer grab thing and smack Superman off on his head, to get him to try and like jar back into, like, start talking like Superman instead of robot voice changer. So Steel has the rocket out, and so Superman is telling Steel, it's like, do it, like, hit me with it, like, if anything, like, you need to, like, think of my family first, like, think of the people that you're going to save, and ba 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 ba. But Irons is instead going and trying to motivate Superman by giving him a 12-step program that is going to help him, like, unpossess this Zod from out of him. No. Steel is giving Superman a speech of basically just saying, like, hey, man, like, I've now been here with your family and your sons and your wife and your father-in-law, and like I've seen all these people and like they're rooting for you. They want you to come back to them, and like I want you to come back to them. Like maybe I might have had some past times where I wanted to kill you off because why not? But like, you know what? Like, we're gonna put that aside for now. In blah 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 blah. All of this is paraphrasing. I'm not going via lines because bleh. Anyways, so Superman is to try and fight this, and he is to like astro projectingly poop out the Zod. So Superman is to just not like have Zod in his body anymore, and that isn't really evident in here. Like there isn't like a Zod ghost that comes out of Superman's body or anything. And I guess we might just be playing around with that probably in some other episode. I'm naturally assuming that there's going to be something where maybe Superman is going to be knocked out unconscious and all of a sudden like Zod is going to take over bizarrely. That's what I'm assuming is going to happen. Like, hey guys, there's still an after fact of Superman having Zod inside of him. So stupid. So, Zod is to eventually be, like, taken from out of Superman. And so now both Steel and Superman are teaming up to take out, Morgan Edge. And so what ends up happening is Morgan Edge goes back to his father to just kind of like talk about things, and then Morgan Edge is to take his like Kryptonian weapon and go out into space and try to laser this Kryptonian weapon, and so both Superman and both Steel are making it out to space as well, and so Steel uses the solar weapon against, or the solar rocket against Morgan Edge, and so that lands Morgan Edge back onto Earth, and so that just basically says that Morgan Edge is to be defeated. And that Morgan Edge doesn't have his powers now, so I guess he's just going to be going into, I'm assessing, Kryptonian prison for X amount of his days. So, but here's the thing that they kind of left this, like, open-ended, where Morgan Edge could eventually come back, because supposedly his assistant is all of a sudden missing. They had to like cleverly work that into the story of like, hey, where is that Wesley woman or that Leslie woman? And they're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know where she could be. She's probably just gonna magically deliciously appear and break eventually Morgan Edge out of prison. Because I'm naturally assuming that's going to happen. Like, it's probably going to happen at the tail end of this season, or whichever. Like, because I'm assuming they're going to easily go into season 2. Like, I think a lot of people have been won over by this show, hence the view count. But, like, maybe not as good as, like, Batwoman, bizarrely, as far as view counts. But, hey, frickin' all that I can take, all that you guys will be willing to give me is good enough. So with that said, I think that does cover a bulk of what happens in this episode. Like, if anything, the Cushings or whatever, Kyle and Sarah and Lana had come home to see a sign on their house that says "Get out of Smallville," and so they're like, "Oh my god!" Like Kyle is just so horrified by this town that has now like rejected him, and so all they decide to end up doing is trying to remove the paint, and Kyle is like, well, obviously, like, take this off with paint thinner, and then all of a sudden we get to them all of a sudden like just like flinging they're like going into like childlike things where they're all of a sudden tossing all the water and goofy stuff like soap and all over all everyone, and then like they're grabbing one another as if like this is like a commercial that's been done to death. Like they're gonna just like toss a product off to the side and just be like, "Hey, buy a bike," and then like and the commercial is to end. So with that, I think I'm going to get out of here. I apologize for how long this was, but it's been a while since I've got into this, so I had also a lot of jokes, bizarrely, in this episode, because there was a goofy thing about this episode. But other than that, I think that's all that I needed to say about this episode. There's probably a lot of details that probably got left out of this whole review, but, like, I'm going to get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.